Welcome to the Mayor of Money podcast with former Burlington Mayor Rick Goldring of Goldring Financial Leadership. In this podcast, we provide successful business owners, including doctors and dentists, with insights to minimize tax and risk while maximizing retirement income and future legacy. Join us for this journey as Rick draws from years of experience and guest experts, including successful entrepreneurs, to provide unique strategies and approaches to estate and financial planning matters, as well as business in general. Now, on to the show.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ralph Benmergui, and I'm horning in on somebody else's podcast. Rick Goldring is the Mayor of Money, and he and I are going to have a conversation today. We had one about how Rick grew up and his life in Burlington, and we stopped just at the point where we're going to start talking about the political life of Rick Goldring. And a lot of people know Rick mostly for that, as the counselor, the mayor, the candidate. So I'd love to just explore that. Rick, welcome to your own show.
Thank you very much, Ralph. It's great to be on my own show.
Well, you know, it's the way it works.
Yeah.
So we left off just before you made a decision that a lot of people think about, but very few people do, which was to run for office. And in the case of you running for office, tell us about the first choice you made to run as a candidate for a political party.
Yeah, so just some quick background on that. I was traditionally a progressive conservative federally and provincially. And when there was a change in the organization of the Conservative Party of Canada, how the Alliance and the PCs merged together, I didn't feel at home in that particular party. So I went to a Green Party meeting in Burlington for their local constituency for the riding in Burlington. And I was one of three people at the meeting. But prior to that, I looked on the website. I'd seen some of the policies of the Green Party, and I thought they made an awful lot of sense. And certainly with climate change and with the environment, they were very insightful and very thoughtful in their policies. So, make a long story short, they had a candidate lined up for the federal election of January 2006, but that person ended up moving to Mississauga, didn't want to do it anymore. And there was two of us left in the room, and I was the one who drew the short stick or the long stick, however you want to say it. But I said, sure, I'll run, I'll have some fun, I'll be a candidate for the Green Party. And I must say, it was a lot of fun. I was working hard to finish third in the riding in Burlington, but that wasn't to be. I finished fourth, and I didn't really move the needle much as far as Green Party support in Burlington. But I had a great time the whole process of being involved in all the candidates meetings. I enjoyed the process immensely, and as a result of that, a number of people encouraged me to run for an open seat on City Council for the fall of 2006.
So while you were knocking on doors, what did you learn about being a politician in that run for the Greens?
Well, it was interesting. I would go to the door, I'd identify who I was and who I was representing, and I would hear a lot of, "Well, God bless you." And I said, "You're not going to vote for me, are you?" But people say, "Well, God bless you. Thank you for doing what you're doing. We need more people like you to do what you're doing. But I can't vote for you because I have to keep the conservatives out, or I have to keep the liberals out, or we got to kick the liberals out, or whatever." It wasn't about who you really wanted to vote for, it was who you wanted to vote against. And I found that very interesting, very amusing at the same time, because I got it many times at the door. "God bless you. Thanks for doing what you're doing." But as soon as I heard that, I knew people weren't going to vote for me.
And so you also had to endure the inadequacies of our first past the post system, where people don't vote for what they believe in, they vote for what they don't want to have happen.
That's true. No, I saw it firsthand that the major two parties, the Liberals and the Conservatives, were the ones that got all the attention. And a lot of the time, it wasn't that people were enthralled with either party. It's just that they wanted to vote for one to stop the other. And it's not a very inspiring way to vote. And I tried to encourage people that when you vote Green, you really are making a point. You're really making a point that you don't like the tradition of the historical parties, and you want to make a difference on the environment going forward.
I guess you also learned about how to do the elevator pitch, how to get a political communication down to a piece that people could actually engage you with, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You have to be clear when you go to the door. You have to be clear about why you're running and what you would do if you would be successful. Most people didn't think I was going to be successful, and I didn't either. But certainly had to be very focused about why I was running for the Green Party, and I was.
Did you have a political bug before all that, or?
Oh yeah, no, I thought of it. I thought of running for council when in my 20s, but it was never logical or rational for me to pursue that. And we'll talk about when I was mayor, but shortly after I was elected mayor, I was at a big fundraising event, and a couple of ladies that I went to university with came up and gave me big hugs and saying, "Congratulations, we're so not surprised because you talked about this in university." And I said, "I did? Yeah, you said you were going to be mayor of Burlington." And I was shocked because I don't remember it that well that I would have said that. So yes, I had the political bug for some time, but never thought it was a logical or rational pursuit.
What was it about the idea of engaging in politics at the representative level that appealed to you?
I'd always been interested in politics, and election night was always a big night in my home as a kid growing up, where we'd make it a big deal to watch the results. And certainly leadership conventions were great TV as well and great entertainment. I was just attracted to the process, attracted to the service, and being able to hopefully make a difference. If you were running for something, that you can make a difference in your community or your country or your province in whatever way you could. So that appealed to me. What appealed to me too was being out, meeting people, listening to people, hearing different points of view, and connecting with people. That was always enjoyable to me as well.
The other side of this is you talk to people, or I do sometimes, and they go, politicians, they're all a bunch of bums. What do you do with that cynicism, that politicians are all, doing it for the wrong reasons?
Yeah, you just have to ignore it. That you hear a lot of stuff on the campaign trail. Not so much when I was running for the Green Party, because people were
they were
saying,
just
"God
blessing
bless
you."
But certainly, running for council and then running for mayor, it certainly became a lot more intense. And you have to be grounded. You really have to be grounded in who you are, and you're have solid self-confidence, and that can be a challenge sometimes when you're getting negative viewpoints and having negative conversations, and you have to do your best to deflect that and keep going and keep focusing in a way that you're focusing on things that you believe in.
Yeah. Stay the course, I guess.
Absolutely.
So you were blessed many times and came in fourth as the Green Party guy.
Right.
But I'm sure it was in some ways less pressure to know I'm not going to win, but I am going to learn. So the city council seat, tell me about how that came about and what you did with it.
Well, what happened after the election, where I ran for the Green Party, a lot of people said to me, "Rick, you'll be a great candidate. Why don't you run for council?" Mike Wallace, who became the MP, vacated a seat on Burlington City Council, and so I ran for that particular position, the councillor for Ward 5 in Burlington, in November of 2006, and I was successful. There were 9 candidates running, and I outworked everybody. I mean, that's how I won, is I outworked everybody. I started knocking on doors in May or late May, and I knocked on every door in the ward. And a lot of doors I knocked on twice. So when you're running for council, a councillor position, it's all about going to the door. You've got to be seen. You've got to connect with people. You got to have conversations with people. You have to understand what people are thinking in order to be successful. But I outworked everybody by having more conversations and knocking on more doors than anybody else that ran.
The other part of it in municipal politics is incumbency really matters. If you've already got a seat, it's really hard for other people with limited time and resources to get on the radar and have people know what they stand for because they're not running for a political party. In your case, you had the blessing of an open seat, right?
Right. It made a complete difference, obviously, because you're running against an incumbent, and if the incumbent's, perceived to be doing a relatively good job, and for a lot of people with municipal government, it's the one that people are less interested in. So if there's a perception that the municipality is being well run, it's very difficult to beat an incumbent. But I was beaten as incumbent when I was running for re-election of mayor, which we can talk about.
Yeah, but mayor is different. City councilor is not mayor. I mean, that's a whole different thing. Right?
Correct. The whole secret, as I said, for being successful as a candidate and running for a council position is to knock on doors. I mean, that's the key. I mean, yes, you need good material, you need a good team behind you, but the candidate needs to go out and knock on as many doors as possible, have as many conversations as possible, and really listen to what people, what their hopes, dreams, and aspirations are, and go forward on that basis.
So you started getting more and more involved. What, by the way, did your spouse think of all this, that you were knocking on doors from May on and things like that?
Cheryl was very supportive. She knocked on a lot of doors with me. We go out together on a Sunday afternoon in the summertime, and she'd take one side of the street and I would take the other. No, Cheryl was very supportive and was very supportive for my political career, period.
Yeah.
And you need that. You have to, because you're all in. Even if you're a counselor, you're all in. It's a very intense job. And you're going hard all the time. You're dealing with all sorts of issues on a regular basis. You're out on a regular basis. And certainly when I was mayor, the joke was I would never say to Cheryl when I was going to be home. I would tell Cheryl when I was going to be home for dinner, not when I wasn't going to be home for dinner.
Right.
Because the vast majority of the time I simply was not home for dinner, Monday to Thursday.
Yeah, I don't think people realize what kind of a toll political life takes on the people who engage in it. It's a heavy responsibility and a lot of time, right?
It is a significant amount of time, and it can be very intense depending on what issues you're dealing with. But it is a significant amount of time, and it isn't just the time that you're in the job. It's when you're those times when you're not officially working, you're thinking about it on a regular basis.
Right. So Burlington, Ward 5, the issues come up. You're not affiliated with a political party, which for some people is quite liberating because they can just decide issue by issue what they're doing. But what did you learn as a city councilor?
Well, for me, what I learned is to be upfront and to be candid and honest with people. And tell people what they needed to know, not necessarily what they wanted to hear, and to stand up and be accountable if something went wrong, and if I did something wrong, I would step up and make amends. So I learned that, and I learned that isn't necessarily the way a lot of elected officials operate, but certainly it's the way I operate, and I did as a councilor, and I believe I did as mayor as well.
I think a lot of, some people in politics, it's about damage control. It's about never being wrong.
Right. There was a time when I was a councilor where there was a piece of land up in the uptown community in Ward 5 in Burlington. And it was a piece of land and it was vacant, and it wasn't designated to be a park. It was basically vacant land owned by the city of Burlington. And an idea was broached with me that says, Rick, we could sell that land and we could use the funding to help other areas of your ward with improvement in recreational facilities. And I had been on the job, I think, less than a year, and it sounded good and it made sense to me. So we ended up, starting the process to sell this land. And I didn't even let people know we were going to do it, let people know in the neighborhood, and people found out about it. And then I had a public meeting already arranged to talk about some other issues. And there was like 80 people showed up for this meeting that I wouldn't have thought more than 6 or 8 would have showed up for. And it changed the tone of the meeting quite a bit because I had to focus on this particular issue. So, but right at the beginning of that part of the meeting, I knew what they were there for. And I said, you know what, I apologize. I apologize for making a decision without making this decision firstly, but making this decision without even having any connection with you or any discussion about what was going to happen. I mean, it was the worst example of community engagement on my part. And but I listened carefully, and what I found out, and people brought with them, is on some of the promotional material around the homes that they had bought, it showed that particular piece of land was going to be a park. So that was their expectation. And I didn't know that before that particular evening. And that's why it's helpful to have a dialogue with residents before you make decisions.
Yeah.
But what I did do is I committed to reverse the decision. I went back to council, and we had to, and I asked them. I asked for their support and renewing the issue, reviewing the issue, and everybody was supportive of not going forward to sell the land. In fact, we turned it into a park that the neighborhood was quite pleased with. But I was really surprised, though. I mean, I was just. I wasn't trying to hide anything at that particular meeting. I was as open as I could be about what happened and apologetic. But I was shocked when CHCH TV 11 showed up, and they did some interviews with some of the residents. They did they recorded some of me speaking at the meeting, and I was the lead story that night on TV 11 News for 11 o'clock. And I think I was the lead story because I fell on my sword. I said I was wrong. I apologized. And I said I was going to fix it.
Yeah. And if you had fought instead, or been unwilling to listen, you would have been another kind of lead story.
Right.
It would have been all these people going, this guy doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, everybody makes mistakes. It's good to know sometimes we just say, okay, I made a mistake. So you're a city councilor. While you're on council, is it in your head, I might want to run for mayor one of these days?
I saw it as a possibility, but again, I never thought it was logical or practical or rational to pursue. And in October of 2009, one of my colleagues on council approached me and asked me if I was going to run for mayor, and I said I wasn't. And I ended up changed my mind on that, and I had a hard time changing my mind because I gave my word that I wasn't. But I ended up having a conversation with a community leader in early June of 2010, who strongly encouraged me to run for mayor, and sort of had conversations with me for the month of June that, Rick, you have to run. The city needs you. You'll get support, and so on and so forth. And finally, she wore me down, and I said, okay, I'm going to do it. But it was fascinating because I said I was going to do it around July the 2nd or July the 3rd. I had no team. I didn't know what was involved in running for mayor, but I simply made the decision to do it. And I called 13 people one morning and asked them if they would be available to come to a meeting the following night to discuss my campaign for mayor, because I had an idea that these people might support me, and all 13 people showed up to that meeting. And it was a very choppy, unorganized meeting because I didn't know what I was doing. But I had a great team that came together, and we put together an absolutely great campaign. I was successful being elected in October of 2010.
Now, the person who initially asked you if you were going to run, they asked you because they were going to run, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember having the conversation with Carol and telling her that I was going to run. And she said, you said you weren't going to. And I said, yes, I realize what I said, but here's why I am running. I was open and candid. I felt badly in a way that I was going back on what I said back in October of 2009. I changed my mind in July of 2010. However, it was a different circumstances.
Yeah,
I still have trouble with the fact that I said clearly I wasn't going to run, and I did reverse that. But anyway, move on.
Yeah, it's not like you signed a legal document saying I will never run. And when you were talking though about why you wanted to run, why it was important to run, why was it important for you to run?
Well, I firmly believe that I had something to offer. I firmly believe that the electorate was looking for a different approach to municipal government and a more candid, upfront, honest approach. And the mayor that I ended up beating in the election, I have a lot of respect for, a very bright, capable person who'd been been in politics for a long, long time. But unfortunately, the focus was on the spin and less on the substance. And I felt that I would be the one who could lead the city in a way, in a straightforward, candid way, and deal with issues up front without the spin, but with being direct with all the issues we had to deal with. And I felt my leadership would be beneficial for the city.
So if I was your communications guy, I would have said, why do you believe in Burlington? What would you have said?
Well, I mean, I've one of the things when you're mayor is you're the chief cheerleader for your city, and I've grown up in Burlington. I've been here since I was 3. You look at all the amenities that Burlington has. You look at the geographical location where Burlington is. You look at the wonderful neighborhoods. You look at the fact that we have 50% of our land that is in the green belt and protected from development. You look at our downtown and our waterfront. The fact that we're so centrally located to so many universities and community colleges, transportation hubs, and great people, great neighborhoods. We're the envy of many, being in Burlington.
So your belief ran deep.
Yes.
But okay, so a person says, I think I'll run for mayor. I think this can be a great thing. Then they put the chain around your neck in every way, figuratively as well. Was it a shock to think, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Now I'm the mayor. What's going on here?
It was, I remember election night very well. It was very exciting. There was a lot of people in the campaign office that were in a celebratory mood, and as I was, but mine was somewhat muted because it was like, oh my goodness, I've got the job. Now what happens? And I must say, I've said it several times that it was analogous to going into a gym where there's a fast moving treadmill and you're forced to get on it when it's already going at a high speed. And you have to somehow stay on the treadmill. And at the beginning, you certainly feel awkward. You look awkward, but somehow you scramble and you get into shape and you end up where your life is a treadmill, and that's normal and you're used to it. No, it was challenging for me. I would suggest that in most things that I've done well at, I haven't done well at initially. It takes me a while to get comfortable. It takes me a while to sort of find my right energy level and right focus. And I did the same as mayor. It wasn't a case that I didn't understand the issues. I did. It was a case that I didn't really understand what the position is all about, despite the fact I was a councillor for 4 years, because being mayor is maybe, 35 or 40% more time than being a councillor. But the intensity of the job is like 10 times that of being a councillor.
Tell me more about being mayor, what it is.
Well, when you're mayor, I remember at the beginning, people would say, you're doing a great job. You're doing a wonderful job. And I was thinking, well, how do you know? Like, if you're with me during the day, I mean, how do you know? But I learned as mayor, you get credit for things you shouldn't get credit for, and you get blamed for things you shouldn't get blamed for. And I just grew to accept that if people were giving me credit for things that just because, well, is my city, and people were giving me credit for things that were happening in the mayor's city, I just said, thank you very much, because I knew I was going to get blamed for things that I had nothing to do with. So no, it was interesting. My first council meeting chairing as mayor, at the end of the meeting, the mayor has to sign all the documents that are required with regard to the minutes of the council meeting. And I remember as a councillor, as soon as the meeting is over, I was out of there. I was gone. And as mayor, everybody goes, and you're sitting in the council chambers with the city clerk, and you're signing all these documents that need to be signed to make the meeting official and make any sort of bylaws that you passed, official, et cetera. And I remember sitting there for 10 or 15 minutes doing this signing of all these documents, and the media waiting for me to make some comments. I noticed that they didn't care to talk to my council colleagues. They wanted to talk to the mayor. So that was a pretty poignant moment, when the fact that I felt sort of alone, and I felt that it all rested with me.
Yeah, the weight of responsibility, the pointy end of the stick, all those things are true about being in the leadership. But here's the odd part, right? That you only get one vote on council.
Right.
You're not the leader of a political party and you can whip the vote.
Yes.
How did you find that experience of having to negotiate votes and things like that?
I was successful on occasion, and I was unsuccessful on occasion. That's a challenge. That is very much a challenge. And in order for people to take a certain position, they have to have a certain rationale or reasoning to take those positions. So sometimes I was successful in convincing people of the way to go, and other times I wasn't. And I used to, I beat myself up a few times for votes not going the way I would have liked them. But that's what you have to accept, though, because as mayor, you're like a chair among equals, that everybody does get one vote, and you certainly have some little bit more statutory powers than a councillor, but not much. So really it's by influence, not authority, that the mayor has any sway.
So your first term's over, you decide I'm going to run again, and you win by a lot, right?
Right.
Why did you run again?
I felt I was just getting going, just getting comfortable in the job. And one of the challenges that I knew was going to be apparent, and turned out to be more challenging than I thought it was going to be, is the fact that Burlington was out of traditional land for subdivision development, the traditional suburban development, and that we had to build within our city. We had to focus on intensification, infill, and redevelopment. And I was inspired by that. It was a challenge because I knew that a lot of people wouldn't be supportive of it, but the benefits of intensification, infill, and redevelopment, I certainly believed in, and did my best to bring people along and educate people about why we were in the situation we were with regard to development.
So the tough one, not winning. What was that like?
It was awful. I have to say it. It was absolutely awful. The day after the election was, I'd stayed up to, election night when I lost. I stayed up too late. I drank too much beer. Didn't sleep well. Was out on my own picking up lawn signs from supporters and helping my office team clean out the office. I felt as bad as I've ever felt. In fact, worse than I've ever felt any time in my life. It was a day I will remember as being the worst day of my life.
Wow.
But and there was a time there during the worst day of my life where I was, I would say I had a bit of for about 10 minutes, I had a bit of a breakdown. But you know what? That night I said, I got to go for a walk. I got to shake this off. And I went out for a 45, 50-minute walk. The next morning I went to the Y, where I've been a member for a long time. And I got on the elliptical. I did some good cardio and I felt a lot better. It hurt. The election loss certainly hurt. But I was digging in my heels that I wasn't going to let that affect me or let it stop me. And I was going to continue my life, and I was going to go out and attend events and get back involved in business, which I did. And but it hurt. And I would say it took a year, 2019 to get over it. It took a year.
I don't think people understand what it's like to, especially with politics, like in one night, all of a sudden you either have a job or don't have a job. It's so
Yeah.
sudden, it's so immediate, it's so permanent when it happens.
And I guess the thing is that, when you're a mayor or MP and I remember seeing an interview with the former Premier Kathleen Wynne about what she went through. But, it's like it's like you're immersed in it. It's not that it's a job, it's your life. You're immersed in it. You're immersed in it to, 70 hours a week, immersed in it. It's you live and breathe and sleep, the issues of the city. And the job of being mayor. And so when all of a sudden, the treadmill stops, to use my earlier analogy, the treadmill stops and you get spit off the treadmill, it's very discombobulating because your whole life has been singularly focused. And, you shouldn't allow yourself to get in that position, but it's very difficult when you have these positions to not be all in. You have to be in order to do the job well. You have to be. And so to have the sort of the carpet pulled from under you is devastating. And it took a lot of time and a lot of effort on my part to get over it.
I talked to a former mayor a while ago, and she was talking about her city, and she'd been the mayor there for a fair bit of time. And you could feel the love she had for her city in everything she was saying. Every block had something to do with, oh, we did that here. We did this here. We didn't do that. We should have done it over here. So when she walks through her city, her whole life kind of flashes before her in many ways because of that. When you walk through Burlington now and you see that park, for instance, or any of the things the pier, any of the things that you were engaged in, what goes through you?
Well, I'm fortunate to live in the community that I grew up in. So whether I was mayor or not, there's so much I'm connected to. And, I grew up in Roseland and in that particular neighborhood, and I go through it on the odd occasion, and I have memories of the bonfires with the leaves, because I never used to collect them. I used to burn them in the 60s. And,
That's right.
and I remember, walking to school, Laurie Smith School, which is no longer there. It's condominium townhouses now, and Roseland Plaza, where Steinberg's was, and I live very close to Nelson High School and Nelson Arena. And Nelson Arena is where I scored my first goal in minor hockey at the south end, and I can still see my dad give me the thumbs up when I scored the goal.
Yeah.
I remember when the Burlington Mall opened. I remember when there was a theater on Lakeshore Road, the Odeon Theater. I've got many memories. And I look at my time as mayor with a great deal of pride when I look at some of the development that we approved and some of the projects that I supported. I look at the Performing Arts Center that was decided the term before I was elected mayor, but I was a councillor and I cast a vote in favor of the Performing Arts Center. And there's so many naysayers on that, but it's turned out fantastic. 10 years later, it's turned out to be everything we thought it would be and more than that. A real civic center for the arts. And I look at the pier along Brant Street. We didn't talk about that at the foot of Brant Street. That was a very controversial project, and it wasn't just me, but I certainly led the charge to finish it. And I had certainly lots of support at staff at the city of Burlington and my colleagues on council that we were able to finish that pier. Now I look at that pier, and I'm not the originator of it. Rob McIsaac was his idea, but I joke and say I'm the proud stepfather of the pier because I had to finish it when we had some challenges with it in 08, 09. And now it's the #1 sort of iconic symbol of the city of Burlington. You look up Brant Street Pier, you Google it, you'll see pages and pages and pages of photos that people have taken and posted online of the pier. I look back at the whole city of Burlington as being a wonderful place. And despite the challenges we're having with development these days, we as a city will get through it. And there are benefits to intensification, infill, and redevelopment that people will appreciate over time. But the city is going through a transition, and people don't like change, and especially when it's not their idea. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge, but certainly if you look at all the things we should be grateful for about living and working in Burlington, there's a whole long list of them. and we should never forget them. And having some extra development in downtown won't affect that.
Do you miss politics?
On occasion. I mean, I love what I'm doing now. I'm back in a business I love, and we're going to do another interview about that. But I love what I'm doing now. But sure, I miss it. And every once in a while, I think, boy, with what I know now and what I've sort of learned in the last, few years, I'd be a better mayor now than I was back then. And I think about it, and I'm going, and then I realize what that means. It means I wouldn't have a wife, probably. But what it means is, more late nights and more contentious meetings and, more divisive issues. And I'm happy where I'm at.
Well, I know lots of people in business of politics, and I know how much it takes to actually be one, and it takes a hell of a lot more to be a good one. So I don't live where you live, but I'm the kind of guy who'd walk by and go, thanks. I appreciate that you did that, because it ain't nothing. It's a big thing.
It certainly isn't. No, that's for sure.
Well, listen, next time we'll talk about what you're doing now and how you're helping people in a totally different way.
We'll look forward to that, Ralph. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for letting me hang out at your podcast, the Mayor of Money, Rick Goldring.
Thank you for listening to the Mayor of Money podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. If you'd like to have a one-on-one discussion with Rick or have an idea for a particular guest or topic, contact him at rick@rickgoldring.com. See you next time on the Mayor of Money podcast.